Welcome. Welcome to the Beyond Couch Therapy Well Healed video series. I'm really excited that you are here because hopefully you've had a chance to dive into the Beyond Couch Therapy Season 2 and you were able to get a lot of great information from being in that space. And so now you perhaps have some questions around what's next for you, and wanting to have a better insight into what's going on in your world, in your mind, in your heart. And that's what this series really is here to help you understand. So I am Heidi Day. I am your trauma conqueror, soul healer, and transformational coach for badass women who want to feel as good as they look. And I specifically talk to female business owners and executives because I know that so often we pave our way to our success trying to outperform our pain. So you might be like, Heidi, I don't know that I have any pain. I don't really know that I have anything that I need to heal. And so I wanted to stop by for this first video to kind of share with you a definition of trauma that perhaps you haven't thought of before. So my definition of trauma is any negative experience that overwhelms your ability to cope or to really manage it. And as a result, it changes how you see yourself and how you walk through the world. Okay, so that is our working definition here in the well-healed space. That's our working definition of trauma. And I want to give you a little bit of insight today on big traumas and little traumas. Did you ever even know that there was such a thing? Yes, there is a thing of big traumas and little traumas. So I think that one of the things that trip us up as we have the conversation around trauma is we believe that we know what trauma is and we think that it is this big event, right? Like someone who saw someone murdered, someone that was raped, someone perhaps that was in the military and went to war. Those are ideas of big traumas. And indeed, those are the kind of things that we know about. These are the kind of things that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. We get that. So PTSD is real. Those kind of things that cause serious injury or that cause a fear of losing life, certainly sexual violence, all of those things are the big traumas. But here is something that's really interesting that we have now uncovered in research is that big traumas can also be experienced through the threat of having any of those things happen to us, even if they actually don't ever happen. So, I've worked for a long time with survivors of domestic violence, and I recall someone who she had one incident of actual physical violence. And then after that, he had threatened her every time, reminiscing about what he had done to her previously. So it was one incident of actual physical violence. And then after that, it was simply the threat of, don't let me have to do to you what I did last time, right? So that kind of threat can really create emotional damage and cause havoc in our emotional system. So having the threat of that is really important. Also, witnessing a big T in someone else. I am a product of domestic violence. And so I saw domestic violence happening on a regular basis. Having seen that, that qualifies kind of as a big T in my life. And when we look at, there was a fantastic study done by CDC and Pfizer looking at adverse childhood experiences. So super interesting to check into because as we look at this, we understand what I like to say, all of us have something to heal. That is the truth. So speaking of all of us having something to heal, let's look at our little T's. So our little T's are things that we kind of generally would just kind of say, not that big of a deal, right? Yeah, I had something that happened to me, but it wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know where you were as if you took the emotional healing blueprint. Are you a badass Betty, a kitchen sink Kelly, zoned out Zoe? If you haven't taken it, you don't know yet. Please, I will put that link below because I want you to be able to have that information. But a lot of times we're just in the space of saying, oh, yes, this happened, but it wasn't that big of a deal. And we had, perhaps non-life threatening injuries. We were harassed in a space or bullied. treated unfairly. And so we kind of then create a coping mechanism around these things. But here's what's super interesting is that these things, these small T's that happen, can actually, if they happen, especially over and over again, they can be more impactful than a big T happening. So traumas are something that are all around us. It's really important for us to kind of recognize what our traumatic events have been and how they're showing up in our lives now. And I also just want to point out here that the earlier a trauma happens, so if it happens as the brain is developing, then it creates additional damage. It creates more damage, and we have more healing that kind of has to happen as a result of that. So if you think about the adverse childhood experience, the really profound piece of that is that these are experiences that we had as our brain was still developing. And so our brain kind of grew around that situation and those experiences. If you can think about a tree that grows around like a pole or something like that, it changes how it actually would have grown had the experience not happened. So I hope this was really helpful, and I'm keeping it super short because I want you to come back tomorrow, because tomorrow what we're going to talk about is how trauma shows up in our biology. Girl, it's going to get all the way down to your tissues. You are certainly not going to want to miss this. We'll see you tomorrow for our second dose of Beyond Couch Therapy Well Healed video series.